So I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about what it was like working here in this Fort Hays campus right when it first opened.
When it first opened?
Just one second.
Also, like, open up, like, who you are.
Yeah, tell us your name, please.
Oh, hi, my name's Ursula Davies. Around here I've been known all my life as Urs the Nurse. And when I came in 1976, I actually came right after Intermountain Healthcare came. And at that time, I came in as the assistant to the director of nursing. And I kind of worked all over the place. At that time, only the 3rd floor was open. The 4th floor only took overflow patients. And
sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to have you start that again. You tipped your head in when you started that sentence, so I need to adjust the camera. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, if you'll start over, please.
With my name and everything?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, my name's Ursula Davies, and I have been known in all my life at IHC as Urs the Nurse. And I came in 1976, right after Intermountain had opened this hospital. And when I came, the 3rd floor was the only patient care floor that was open, and they used the 4th floor for overflow patients. The emergency room was actually in this location. This room that we're in was one of the rooms for the emergency room, and they had an tech, an EMT that was down here. And we had 3 shifts, the 7 to 3, the 3 to 11, and the 11 to 7. And when I came in as the assistant to the director of nursing. But that year, that summer, I actually served as the acting director of nursing. Kay had left, and Yvonne Carolus wasn't coming in until September of that year. And so I spent a little bit of time. I spent about 4 months working down in that office. And after Yvonne came here in September of '76, she asked me, would I like to take over the emergency room? And I had never done that. I had never been involved in emergency medicine, but I said I'd go ahead and try it, so I became what we then called head nurses of the emergency room in September of '76. And it was there that I truly fell in love with nursing. I had always liked nursing. I graduated from nursing school in Europe in 1968, and but I had truly, like I said, it was when I went into emergency medicine that I felt like I had found what I really wanted to do. And they made me head nurse of the emergency room down here. I still had, until the following spring, I had a few other roles. I did infection control, I did education, but pretty soon that got to be too much work, and so I asked if I couldn't just be the head nurse over the emergency room. So I became that.
Take a break. Someone's knocking for something. Oh, hey. Go on.
Hey. Here's the deeper light.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about how things changed from when this building opened as it expanded over the years.
Well, as the expansion came, because we needed more room, the town was growing, and nursing changed right along with it. Pretty soon you saw nurses doing more, you saw nurses accepting more responsibility. Of course, as the thing expanded, you suddenly started to have, instead of just a director of nursing, there were charge nurses over, or head nurses over every department. They opened up the 4th floor. They added new services. I remember when they brought in same-day surgery, and they actually ran that out of this department for a little while, and then they built a little add-on building for it. But nursing itself changed, and after that we started things coming in, like they'd start writing protocols, even in emergency medicine, which of course is where I focused my attention. We started doing things by protocol. There were certain steps that you followed. When a patient came in and this was wrong with them, then you did those things. Now you need to remember that in those days we did not have a doctor in the emergency room at the time. We would call them over. The doctor's clinic, Dr. Staley, Booth, Fossen, and McKay Christian used to be the doctors for the emergency room, and they would take turns calling. And so we'd have our patients here and we'd do some basic stuff for them, and then we'd have to wait for the doctor to show up. And it wasn't, I can't even remember the year when we finally got our own emergency physicians and actually had a doctor here full time. But like I said, at the same time, the nurses starting to get more educated. I remember taking advanced cardiac life support, taking trauma classes, getting involved in emergency medical services here in town, teaching the EMT classes and doing that. And as our knowledge increased and as our capabilities increased, then we started doing more for the patient, up to the very present day, where a lot of our stuff is protocol driven, especially in the emergency room. Patient comes in, he has chest pain, these certain things have to take place, and they take place now. And you know, we're even to the point where there's time limits put on those. You have so long to get this much done. And so nursing again has taken over a great deal. It's become more independent, I think is the word I'd use, that you think for yourself and you get a whole bunch done without waiting for the doctor to stand at your shoulder and tell you what to do. And certainly once they brought in Life Flight, and I flew with the fixed wing team when they came in '89, that you see that your nurses are allowed to make a lot more independent decisions. Granted, they're protocol based, but you still have to know what's going on and be able to act upon what you see.
Do you want to tell us a little more about Life Flight, like how it was before you had that, and what a difference it made?
Life Flight, I felt, made a huge difference. When it first came, I mean, we had, and we still do to some degree, you know, send some patients out that we just can't take care of here, but not nearly. When Life Flight came, we didn't have an invasive cardiologist here, and for the longest time, when Life Flight came, when the fixed wing came, we were basically the cardiac express. We flew a lot of patients to Salt Lake City for invasive cardiology, where they could have stents placed, where they could have angiograms done. They came in with chest pain. You said, yeah, it certainly has, you know, it looks like a duck, smells like a duck, walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So you sent them up there for cardiac workups. And then Dr. Neimer came and started doing some stuff. And then the invasive cardiologist came and the cath lab opened. And then we found, yes, it is indeed a heart problem, but we still couldn't fix it. And so we flew a lot of patients. It was not unusual for us to fly 2 and 3 patients a day up to Salt Lake City to LDS Hospital to the cath lab. And then when Dr. Borman came and started doing stents and the others came, then that expanded. Now I stayed with Life Flight for 15 years. I've always said Life Flight is a job for the young. And I am no longer in that category. I can't stay awake 24/7 anymore, and so I gave up Life Flight. It was probably one of the toughest decisions I had to make. But it was something I really enjoyed. We were able to bring in patients from outlying areas to here. We were more rapidly available, even though we were only fixed wing. I never flew with rotor wing. But it was nice. The outlying communities were very helpful and appreciative. They always said, and I mean, it was not unusual to have them say, oh, thank heavens Life Flight's here, when you walked in the door, and I'd be looking around going, excuse me, I'm here, you know. But I think it made an immense difference. And plus it also led us to expand our services. When we realized outlying communities were turning toward us and we were becoming a regional area, it expanded our services more too.
Were you involved at all as you shifted to the new campus? Can you tell us a little bit about that? How things changed as we opened your room?
As we opened, now I was no longer in, when Life Flight came, I stepped down as head nurse in 1988. I realized after quite a long time that I really wasn't happy in an administrative position and was perfectly happy to step down. I had gone into nursing to take care of people, and that's what I wanted to do. So I stepped down. So I was not really horribly involved with the move. I was here with the move. I went over with the move, but I was no longer in a mid-management position, and so I didn't get the involvement, you know, that the mid-managers got with their departments. I thought it was an amazing thing. I mean, we had moved from this spot over into the addition where the IV clinic is now. That was our emergency room at the time of the move. And then We moved over there. It was bigger. It was more expanded. We then had a fast track that was we had one here, but this time it was incorporated within the department, and the move was great. But it took us a while to get used to. I remember one of the guys that used to work nights when I was head nurse here came in one time, and he looked across that emergency room over there and says, "Good grief, you can see the curvature of the earth across this thing. It's so big." And so we had to, of course, expand and get bigger. But again, it also challenged our independence, because even though we had more staff and more doctors, the doctor was always tied up with another patient. And even now, it's rare that the doctor's sitting at the desk twiddling his thumbs waiting for something to do. You still have to bring the patient in, do the assessment, and start whatever is necessary, before that happens.
What's your most memorable experience in your career? Something that stands out?
That stands out. I know they always ask me this question, and I always have to go back to early on in my career as a head nurse down here. We had there was a group of back Easterners, and there was 55 kids on the back of a flatbed truck that had gone around a corner too fast up at Zion National Park, and it tipped, and 55 kids went flying in over tea kettle all over the place. And all of a sudden we got word that there were people coming in. And at that time we didn't even have a formal, I think we had just started working on a formal disaster plan, because we really, and I remember Yvonne Corollas was the director of nursing, and I came in and I pulled in what staff I could. At that point I still only had a tech, an EMT on every shift, one a shift, enough to cover the place 24/7. We called in what we could, and of course the community interest was huge. People did come out of the woodwork to help, but all of a sudden we had an ambulance, we had a radio, but we couldn't keep up. I mean, all of a sudden 55 people poured into this facility. I mean, they came in ambulances, they came in cop cars, they came in park ranger cars, they came in anything that could bring them here. And it was just an interesting how we had to, think fast on our feet and debate what we did. And I remember we turned the front lobby into kind of a, if you come through the door, we'll check you out. If you need a bed, we'll put you on a stretcher here. If you don't need a bed, go out to the front lobby. And it was lucky. I think we only had about 3 or 4 that were seriously injured. Not seriously, but that had something beyond cuts and scrapes that needed more. But what we had, these were all kids from very well-to-do families back east, and all of a sudden we couldn't keep up with phone calls. Everybody's mother and aunt and grandpa and grandma was calling. The switchboard was overloaded. It was amazing. I was lucky enough to be able to be back here, so I kind of missed out on all the brouhaha out in the front lobby. But I have to say, even over all these years, that probably still sticks with me as one of the most interesting events that happened here.
Is there any changes in nursing over the years that you've seen that you think has made a big difference, that's really helped change the way we deliver health care?
Yeah, I do. I think nurses are taught. You need to understand, I went to nursing school where you stood up when the doctor walked into the room and you offered him your chair. I have a European background, and that was even more pronounced there. I remember having a head nurse that would roll up your sleeves for you when the doctor came in case they weren't rolled up straight enough for her needs. And I've watched nursing go from that to nurses that again are very independent thinkers, that it's more of teamwork. It's not yes sir, no sir, but I feel that between the doctors and the nurses now we work very much as a team, that everybody's opinion matters, that you look at the patient as a whole, and everybody is allowed to have input into what's going on. And I think that's very much to the improvement of patient care.
I want to go back to Life Flight again. Can you talk about what they had before that plane? It seemed like they had like an old Navajo or something. They took the seats out. Do you know about that? Can you
yeah.
tell us about that?
Well, what we had, and I actually did a couple of flights where SkyWest pilots flew us. You grabbed some equipment from the hospital and you did the best you could. I remember, I think it was one time somebody that had some kind of an amputation and time was of the essence. And Life Flight actually, they took the seats out of a plane, or not Life Flight, SkyWest, and flew us up there. Then the original to Life Flight was actually a fellow named John Hunt came into town and put in a little Metaflight, and that's where most of us started. It didn't last very long. It was a very small plane, but we did a few flights with that, and that kind of fizzled out. It didn't work very well. And then when Life Flight came within a year, most of us had had some experience, and so we went. But occasionally, I remember one time flying a patient out where the patient's father was actually a neurosurgeon in Las Vegas, and he chartered a plane to come and get his child. And we were involved in putting that child in an ambulance and taking her to the airport and things like that. But like I said, there were maybe 2 or 3 instances until John came, and John didn't have the standards that Life Flight had in terms of equipment, and it was very difficult to take care of patients when you don't have the equipment that you need for them.
Okay. Anything else?
I think you did great.
All right.
Okay.
That's good.